So this is a video that has been requested many times, and it's how to shoot a wedding, which is a huge topic. So we're gonna break it into chunks, and it's not just gonna be me for this. It's a little different. I've brought in Christina Bernalis from ChristinaBernalisPhotography.com. She has a lot more experience shooting weddings than I do, and I'm actually her assistant when she is shooting weddings. And so we're gonna do this kind of a interview type style. I'm gonna be asking some questions, and we're really going to cover the months, weeks, and days leading up to the wedding in this video, and we're going to come back with a part 2, part 3 down the road, hopefully soon, because many of you are starting to get into wedding season. Some of you are looking at shooting your first wedding this summer, or third or fourth wedding. It doesn't really matter. I think we're going to have some helpful advice for you. So, with that said, let's get started. Christina, welcome.
Thank you.
So one of the things that we wanted to talk a little bit about is preparing for a wedding and what's important in those days, back up a little bit further, even weeks and months leading up to a wedding.
I would say communication. Communication with the bride, with the couple, making sure that you're aware of the timeline and all of the events and special highlights that they have planned throughout the day. What I do to make sure that I'm prepared is I send them a questionnaire about 6 weeks before the wedding and ask them to give me not only a timeline but any details about the day that we should be aware of, and some vendor information as well that can help with marketing later on. I try to do an engagement session as much as I possibly can, because that helps the couple get to know how I work, how I shoot, and it's much easier to work with them on the wedding day if I have some time, 1-2 hours before the wedding day for us to kind of get to know each other and help them feel comfortable with me with them in front of the camera, me behind the camera.
Mm-hmm. And I know there's been a couple instances where couples have already had engagement photos done by somebody else, or just have not wanted them to do that. If you have a couple that's not interested in having an engagement session, what's an alternative?
Sometimes I insist that we do an engagement session.
You have to!
Well, I never force them to do an engagement session. I price it so that they have, they see it as an alternative that they can either take advantage or not take advantage, but it doesn't actually affect the cost of the wedding package, because I've had a lot of people in the past kind of opt out of it as a way to save money, and I just really like doing the engagement sessions as a way of meeting the couples. But if they really don't want to do one, then I say at least let's get together and have dinner before the wedding day and, and get to know each other.
Sounds good. So out of that questionnaire and in that communication, you said you have a timeline. What advice do you give brides as far as amount of time to budget for photos?
I try to ask for as much as I can get, because I don't like to be rushed when I'm taking pictures. I know that people don't like to, or guests and couples don't like to spend their whole wedding day being photographed. I understand that, and I don't want them to spend the whole day being photographed. But I ask for at least about an hour for family pictures and couple pictures, an hour and a half if I can. And it usually doesn't take me that long because I'm pretty quick. But I ask for as much as I can, because if we're done soon, then it's good. Oh, good, we're really great on time. We're done soon. Let's go to the cocktail hour. But otherwise, then I will have time.
Give you the time, right.
And the other thing is things sometimes run late, so maybe the ceremony took longer than they had anticipated, or they arrived at the ceremony longer than they anticipated if we're doing pictures after the ceremony. So if we're running behind, then I have a little bit of a buffer to take a little bit longer, or to use up the amount of time that I need. So.
Okay. And along the lines of that questionnaire and kind of getting a sense from the bride of what she, or the couple I should say, wants from the day, do you get a shot list or ask for a shot list?
I don't do a shot list. I have had a bride send me shot lists, and I just kindly and very politely respond that I don't accept shot lists, because I'm kind of just looking for moments throughout the day. And I feel like a shot list would kind of distract me from that. I would be instead focused on either creating moments that wouldn't naturally happen, or miss moments that are happening. So I don't really like to be tied down to a shot list. I have a shot list in my mind of the shots that I need to get, so I plan for that, but I don't have a specific shot list. I would, however, recommend that a photographer who has never shot a wedding before, or that is very new, that maybe do bring a shot list with him or her and have a shot list in mind until you kind of get used to anticipate and to know what shots you need. Just because it's kind of a learning curve, and so I might, if I was just starting out, I might take a wedding shot list from a bride, or I might just make my own and bring it with me.
Right. And I might have gotten a little ahead of myself in talking about the whole day, but we were talking about the timeline and the couple and family photography as well. Now I know, because I've been your assistant, that is one place where we have a very clear list of who is going to get photographed, with names.
Yeah, that's really important. And, you know, I have second shot myself, and that's kind of how I establish my own workflow during the wedding day, is by observing other professionals
Yeah, we'll talk
work.
more about that in a minute.
But yeah, we suggest a list of groups that are common. So bride and her parents, and then bride and immediate family, bride and groom and immediate families. And so we have different variations of that, and then we provide a space in the questionnaire for brides and grooms to list any additional family members that they would like photographed. So yeah, and we ask that to please write names on them, because it helps us be able to call out so that there's no confusion later. And for us to know the names beforehand is just a lot more professional, and I feel like, you know, if you're doing your job right, then you will know parents and siblings and close family members' names. It's just, I feel like we owe that to the
right.
To the
And
couples.
I think this is one of those places where your hour can go very quickly if there's a lot of trouble getting people organized, and especially in these bigger groups, and finding Bob. Where's Uncle Bob? He's still inside, still putting on his tie.
Well, the next piece to that is that, and it goes back to communication, is that I do have a follow-up call with the bride after she submitted the questionnaire. Hopefully she submitted it, you know, well ahead of time, and a week before the wedding I'll call her and go over the final timeline and go over any details. And if, for example, some couples do pictures, like to have a first look and see each other before the wedding and have some family portraits before the wedding, I make sure that they, during their rehearsal dinner or via email the week before or the day before, that they communicate with all of the people that they want photographed, that they need to meet at a certain place. And whether we're doing pictures there or we're going to a different place to take pictures, then everybody will be there. And the other thing is that there have been many times where the bride has assigned a bridesmaid or a family member that kind of wrangles everybody for us. So that's been really helpful. Or my assistant will sometimes do that as well, and just kind of use your big voice and just call people out.
I'd say that's huge. If you don't have a second shooter or an assistant, really get somebody, deputize somebody that's part of the family that knows, and say, here's who I need. Will you bring these people on deck, have an on-deck location, and then your group is getting shot, and then you move and you move. So you really want to be efficient. It's going to take some practice, but that's where time can disappear very quickly on you. You want to watch out for that. We said that. I think that's pretty good. You talk to the bride very close. You said about a week before to make sure everything is the same, or to be aware of any changes. Let's move up to like the night before the wedding. What are we doing, or what are you doing to get ready?
Charging batteries and gathering memory cards if the wedding's early. Otherwise, I'll just kind of do things the morning before. But before the wedding, you know, we have checklists where all of the gear that we need to take, that we check off right before we leave so that we don't forget things. Yeah, just, you know, make sure that everything's in place. The other thing that I didn't talk about when I was talking about contracts, but I think is as equally important as contracts and as insurance, is to have backups. So whether you're working with an assistant, your assistant has, you know, an extra camera, or you yourself rent a camera, it's really important to have a backup camera if something goes wrong, and it can. So if you know, have a backup of the lens that you use the most. If you use something like the 7200, I rent that for my assistant, so if mine were to break or stop working, then I'd have that. But at least a camera body, and at least backup batteries, and you know, something that you feel like you really, really need, you should have backup, so that it's really important and you owe it to the couple to have backups.
And I've put up a video of most of our gear for a smaller wedding, and we'll do a future video that really goes in depth on our gear. Here's exactly what we bring. But we're not gonna go into that on this video. I think we're doing pretty good. I think we can answer some of the questions that we got. Not all of them are about preparing for the wedding. Some are the wedding themselves, but you know, they're fun questions to answer. So one is focal length. Is there a focal length we use most often, or you use most often, that may be best for portraits or otherwise?
I do have a focal length, and this is not necessarily a good thing, but my favorite lens and my favorite focal length would be 85 millimeters on a full frame sensor. And one of the nice things about picking, and I don't think that everybody should pick that as their focal length by any means, and I don't think there is any right focal length for anything. I mean, I think that you shouldn't be shooting portraits with a really wide angle lens. I think that 50 or above is a good focal length for a portrait. But I think that, you know, you can pick, or that limiting myself to shooting with one lens, one focal length for a year, like last year I shot primarily with my 85, I felt like it was really challenging. I challenged myself to see things in a different way. Sometimes it's not the most convenient to be in a small room and have only a focal length of 85 because it can be really tight. But, you know, zooming in and out with my feet and learning to recompose to kind of capture the moment differently using the same focal length has helped me to not only learn what this lens is going to look like wherever I am. So I know that lens. I know what I'm going to get when I stand at a certain distance from something or someone, what it's going to look like. But I think it's helped me get better, and it's helped me creatively to just, you know, challenge myself to one focal length. So for me, the 85 millimeter length is my favorite, but I don't think that's the right one by any means. I don't think there's any right focal length. I think that traditionally for portraits, 50 or above, but I know some awesome photographers that take amazing pictures at like 24 millimeters and amazing portraits at 24 millimeters. So you just need to watch for distortion and know where to place your subject. So it's all about knowing your gear and using it properly, I think, more than any specific right or wrong focal length.
How about flashes? We had a question about what flashes do we take with us?
Yeah. I primarily use natural light as much as I can. I just like the look of it, but during receptions, I will oftentimes use, we have 4 of these 600 EX RTs that we got last year, because I can kind of have one on my camera and I can give one to my assistant and have it, he or she can have it on his or her camera, and we can have 2 off camera as rim light, and it just kind of adds a little bit of depth to the room and has a really nice look for pictures during reception pictures. But yeah, I use the 600s. Anything will work though. I've worked with a 580 EX2 for a really long time. I think even like a 430, is that what the entry level one is? Anything will work. What matters is, again, similar to the lenses, is how you use it, and you know, whether or not you balance or you point it straight at your subject, and what kind of look you're going for. So it's about how you use the gear, not what gear you have.
Okay. I like this question. Do you previously study the place to kind of find good spots to take photos? Scouting. Do you scout?
Yes and no. So I don't go to the place before, like well ahead of the wedding day, unless a client specifically requests it. I have done that. but I don't go on my own, simply because on the day of the wedding, unless you go like exactly a year ahead of time, it's not going to look the same. So you're not, on the wedding day, it could be raining, it could be sunny, and you have no idea where you're going to get. So I do get there an hour beforehand to places that I've never shot at before, to scout for locations and just set up gear and, you know, like drop off the computer and things like that. So I do scout a little bit beforehand, but most of the time when I'm shooting, I find that like I will see things and then just shoot and just kind of quote unquote wing it. So, but yeah, I mean, it's good to scout, and I budget that in my timeline for the day.
This is a big question. Any suggestions for someone who wants to break into the wedding photography business?
Assist, like try to work to apprentice with other photographers, with other pros whose work you admire and you respect. That's what I did for the first 2 years of being a photographer, when I wanted to really take it seriously, and I learned a lot and a really great deal of information, and I still do it because I enjoy it so much. So yeah, assist and learn, invest money in education. There's a website called Creative Live that I'm not sure if people know about. It's just creativelive.com, and they have amazing courses by some amazingly talented photographers with lots of advice. And you know, they're 3-day courses, and they cost, I think, like $150, which might seem like a lot, but you know, when you calculate the return that you'll get from that, then that it's a lot. So if you want to get serious, I would say assist. Just like learn and try to consume as much information as you can, and also try to apprentice with somebody that knows what they're doing.
Yeah. I think that to add about the kind of investing in your own education, people are so quick to buy a really expensive piece of gear, but really what's going to give you the best pictures is knowing how to use the gear you have. Yes, it's been said lots and lots of times, but a really good photographer can make beautiful pictures with anything you hand them.
It's true. And you need it. I mean, there comes a point when you decide that, you know, you have the choice between the cheaper 85 and the more expensive 85. And there comes a point when you, can afford it, justify it, and when you really owe that to your clients to give that kind of quality, because there are reasons why people buy more expensive lenses. So there will come a point for you to buy the expensive gear, and then gear that is necessary for you to do the work. But by no means is that a necessity or a requirement if you want to start. It's about knowing, preparing, and like knowing what to expect, and education and all of that. So, and knowing how to use your camera.
All right. And I think the last question that we'll answer from this list here is about how many pictures do we take at a wedding, or do you take at a wedding?
A lot. I think more than we should take. Probably between 3,000 and 4,000. And then we deliver about 700, and this year I'm committed to delivering less or fewer pictures, not because I want to take anything from my clients by any means, but because it's my job to curate the images from the wedding day in such a way that the series as a whole looks the best that it can. So your work, the series as a whole, is as strong as your weakest image. So if you include, obviously you're going to include images that are really important, and if you did a crappy job with that particular moment, then you have to include it. But as much as you can, you know, try to curate, and don't give pictures to people that look too similar, because then when they're looking at them, they're going to get confused and overwhelmed. And as it is, like 500-700 pictures is a lot for people to look at. So, and then it goes back to shooting, overshooting and shooting a lot, and shooting 3,000, 4,000 pictures is a lot. And then what that's going to translate into is you sitting in front of the computer for hours calling down images, and that's not the ideal situation when you're trying to run a profitable business. You're trying to limit the amount of time that you spend on the computer. So,
Okay.
So yeah, that was a long-winded answer about.
Okay. That was good. All right, I think that wraps up prep time. I'm sure there's some things that we didn't cover. As I said, it's huge. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. We'd be happy to answer, or come over and find us on the Facebook page and find me. And if I can't answer it, I'll pass it along to Christina. And we will follow this up with more videos. I think the next one is to kind of walk through what a typical wedding day looks like and some tips and tricks, what you can do to get the best light, and things of that sort. So we'll be back, and thanks so much for watching. And if you haven't already, please subscribe.